Flawedcast, episode 219, Threat to Bureaucracy. If you're going to sin, sin against God, not the bureaucracy. God will forgive you, but the bureaucracy won't. Hyman Rickover.
Flawedcast, get in the arena.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. All of our esteemed Flawedcast listeners, want to welcome and thank everybody for tuning into a brand new, triggering, and hopefully thought-provoking episode of Flawedcast. As always, I'm with my partner in crime, Mr. Carl Tuckerson. Carl, how goes it?
Mr. William, it's well. Hope it's well for the listeners. Things are really looking up. I hope that when we're done today with this podcast, that people are much, much more intelligent than they were before they tuned in. That's my goal. You think we can reach that goal, or you think it's too high?
I hope
Lower it a little?
I'm going to just hope I'm a little smarter.
That's my goal.
Listen, everybody's got to, fetch for themselves. I'm just hoping I'm a little smarter, which, God knows I need to be. But so a couple things real quick. If you didn't hear our episode last week with Olin and Mary Steelman, I really want to encourage you to go back and listen to it. It was absolutely powerful. And really cool people have been put in our path this year, like CJ and Olin and Mary, and being able to share their testimony, what God's brought them through, has just been a real treat for us to be able to highlight. So go back and listen to that. And if you're struggling with your marriage, if you're struggling with substance abuse, if you're struggling with finding your identity, this episode is going to speak to you. I know that in my heart. And, before we go any further, I do want to give a shout out to the Restore Addiction Recovery. When CJ was here about a month or so ago, I told him I would talk about this program, but Restore Addiction Recovery is a Christ-centered recovery program. Their phone number is 234-571-9503. Their website is restoreaddictionrecovery.com. The email is info@restoreaddictionrecovery.com. They're located in Akron, Ohio. If you know anyone that's struggling with recovery, if you know someone that needs a Christ-centered, spirit-filled place they can go and be submersed in the Spirit of Christ and conquer these demons, please reach out to CJ, give that phone number a call. I know they'll be able to help you. But let's just get into the regular shake and howdy. Want to once again welcome and thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you share this episode, especially to your friends that are posting their Ukraine flags and burning Elon Musk in effigy. I think this is going to be a real eye-opener for you and for them. You can find us anywhere podcasts are. Just search Flawedcast, CLE, Apple, Spotify, Breaker, Anchor.fm. You can also find us on the video platform Rumble. That's under Flawed Inc. And just a programming note, my friend Russ approached me Sunday because he listens to us on YouTube, and we're still on YouTube, and we have like a handful of subscribers.
We are? I thought we got kicked off permanently.
So there's like there's like a handful of subscribers that we still, and I still post. Listening on YouTube is great. If you want to, that's fine. That's not our primary source. I just put it there because I know there's a couple people like Russ who do listen. I think you'll get a lot more access out of Rumble or like Apple or Spotify if you can listen there, but definitely Rumble over YouTube because it's a pro First Amendment, pro free speech. And once again, we're there. Just search Flawed Inc. You can find us on the Project Mockingbird social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Getter, Gab, and Parler. That's all under Flawed Inc. In the description below, there is a link to get a copy of my book, Smith's Heart of Man Repair Manual. And I was all out, and I just got a bunch in. So next time you see me, if you want one, let me know. I'll be happy to give you one and autograph it. But our email is flawedinccle@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, or concerns, you can send us a message there. But with that being said, it's Mr. Tuckerson's second favorite time of the episode. So
Mr.
Carl,
William,
take it away.
I will get to that, I promise. But before we do this, I would like to say you and I had an opportunity to be judges at a chili cook-off.
Yes.
And it was a wonderful time.
It was.
We met a lot of people, which leads directly to what I was going to say. I listened to the podcast that you did with Olin and his wife. And I had a chance to meet Olin at the cook-off. That was where I first met him. And that was before I heard the podcast. Now, sometimes when you meet somebody, immediately you know this person will never be in my circle as long as I live. I will be a Christian. I will show kindness, but they're not coming to my circle. It just isn't going to happen, right? We all have that, right?
They're not my type of people.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
God bless them.
Because they don't want me in their circle either. So it works out. But
it's all good.
I met Olin, and it only took me a couple of minutes to realize that I would have to increase the size of my circle because this guy's huge, right? Big guy.
Yeah, we're about the same size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's something about him that's a little scarier than you. Don't take it the wrong way.
No, absolutely.
All I'm saying is I hit it off with him. I enjoyed his conversation. I enjoyed his spirit when I was around him. And I knew that this was a guy that I wanted to have in my circle. And then after hearing the podcast, that's the reason I'm even saying this. I want people to take to heart what you said, that if they missed the last podcast, go back and listen to his story. Listen to his wife's story. Listen to their story as a couple. Inspire yourself. Mm-hmm. That is what I am saying. Inspire yourself. I wasn't even a part of that podcast. It was you and the missus, of course, who does a wonderful job. A strong competition. Every time I come in after her the week after, I have to really raise my game. As I've said before, we've talked about this.
I'm just saying.
Check that podcast out. I promise you, you will be inspired. You will feel better about the life you're living. You will feel better about some of the things you've been through that you think maybe other people haven't when you hear that story. And I just wanted to say that.
Well, and Olin and I have been becoming friends, and he's promised that he's going to make another appearance soon with you and I both here. So
I can't wait.
As you're listening to this, Olin, we haven't forgot. We got to get it on the books. But he and I had the opportunity to hang out. We grabbed some cigars, a place called Royal Havana. It's in Willoughby, local to us. And we had the opportunity to talk to this gentleman named Daniel. I said gentleman, he's like 19 years old.
Really?
His dad owns the joint, and the kid impressed me. As Olin and I were talking about the Lord and things of the Spirit, he was drawn to Olin. And Olin has such a way about him that when he was talking to Daniel, it just drew him in.
Yeah.
And I just saw this metamorphosis of this kid really opening up to the gospel, really in a loving way. Olin was challenging him, but it was so fascinating to watch God work through him. And the reason I'm bringing this up isn't necessarily boasting a man, but to boast in the work that the Lord had done.
Yeah.
And just seeing God work through him in a gentle, loving, and yet sovereign way. I told Mrs. Smith that it just blessed my heart. And I'm excited to incorporate him more into the podcast in our lives. And,
I agree.
And so, Olin, Mary, if you're listening to this, because she's phenomenal as well.
Yeah.
Like you.
Yes, I wanted to say that also. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Dynamic couple, but I just wanted to say that. Yeah. Now, to the second favorite time of the podcast. Everyone, take your right hand, place it over your left heart, and repeat after us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this is going to be an episode, I think, maybe unlike one that we've done, at least in a while, because this isn't an overtly spiritual podcast, although it is, because we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
And this isn't a conspiracy theory podcast, because everything is verifiable. Everything is factual. Mm-hmm. You and I are not going to discuss anything that might be our opinion.
Right.
We might discuss our point of view or the slant. But everything is going to be verifiable with official governmental websites, because I got everything right from .gov websites and legitimate news sources. And we're going to talk about DOGE. We're going to talk about the event that happened Friday, February 28th, between Vice President Vance, President Donald Trump, and then Zelensky in the White House. And then we're going to talk about the idea of what we are seeing now with these NGOs trying to control and manipulate everything for the Antichrist governmental system, which is something that people ask me all the time, like, you really believe that? And my response is, and you don't. Because everything that we see, even with Zelensky, it's pushing us towards the brink of where the return of Christ, the man of perdition being exposed and revealing himself to the world is imminent. And I'm not saying this as we're trying to fear people into serving the Lord. We're not trying to fear people in anything. One of my life verses is Hosea 4:6. My people perish for a lack of knowledge. And there's so much misinformation about what's going on. I feel it incumbent upon us to try to talk about these things and to try to shed some light, at least to give people ammunition, because when you get in these conversations, family functions, around the cooler, whatever the case may be, I think the time for us to begin as Christians, as men, especially of faith, to be able to stand up in the spirit of the Lord, begin to attack this false narrative and these false ideologies, because they're just propagating that Antichrist system. I'm going to get real brief into simply put, an audit. I don't know if you've ever been audited by the IRS. My wife and I is nothing more than doing a mass audit on the fundage, the billions and trillions of dollars that us as taxpayers, you and I, give to these frauds, and what they are doing with it. And this is such an exhaustive list. I'm not going into everything I found, because we'll have 5 podcasts worth.
Yeah, right.
It's not that important to me. What is important to me is that you remove your bias towards Trump. Everyone knows I'm not a fan all the time. We have issues with him. I feel the same way about Elon Musk. I'm not a cheerleader for Elon Musk. It bothers me that he still wants to shove wires into people's minds. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But what I can appreciate is when somebody is moving the football down the field in an effective way, in which they both are doing. Because some of this garbage, I don't want my taxpaying dollars to go to, especially when we have 22 veterans a day killing themselves. We have people that are still in North Carolina because some of the stuff that DOGE uncovered is the fact that FEMA spent billions giving it to Ukraine, to whereas now we have our own citizens living in tents, eating food out of cans, searching for their lost loved ones for months. As we called it and as we predicted in episode 217, Newsom came out and we predicted it. And it's not on us, because what Holy Spirit's revealing, and if you understand the system, how it works. Newsom came out and said, yeah, we're taking that land, these LA fires. Oh, geez, that's a shocker. But let's start to get into some of this. And you can find this on whitehouse.gov. Okay, and then there's also doge.gov. These are the only 2 primary sources where and once again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Jump in, Carl, when you got some comments. So we got 1.5 million with an M to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Siberia's workplace and business communities. 1.5 million to Siberia. 70,000 for the production of a DEI musical. DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. $70,000 for the production of a DEI musical in Ireland. $2.5 million for electrical vehicles in Vietnam. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT plus activism in Guatemala. $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt.
They have the pyramids, bro.
Right, like they have the Sphinx.
They have the Sphinx.
The Nile River.
The Nile River.
The cradle of the birthplace of humanity.
Real mummies.
Yes.
Why? Unbelievable.
I mean, this stuff is really just like creasing me as I go through it. $100,000 for a nonprofit linked to designated terrorist organizations, even after an inspector general launched an investigation. $1 million to Echo Health Alliance, which has evolved in research at the Wuhan lab. Does that ring a bell, Carl?
Yeah.
$100,000 for meals that went to Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. $100,000 to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan, benefiting the Taliban. I didn't think
I didn't hear a lot of those.
Yeah, once again, just digging into this. Here's $7.9 billion to a project that reached Sri Lanka journalism to avoid non-binary gendered language. Here is $1.1 million to the Armenian LGBT groups. Here is $1.2 million to African Methodist Episcopal Church Service and Development Agency in Washington, D.C. to build a, quote, state-of-the-art 440-seat auditorium. $1.3 million to the Arab and Jewish photographers. $1.5 million to promote LGBT plus advocacy in Jamaica. $1.5 million to rebuild the Cuban media ecosystem. $1.5 million for, quote, art for inclusion of people with disabilities, end quote. $2 million to promote LGBT plus equity throughout entrepreneurship developments throughout Latin American countries. $2.1 million for the BBC can strengthen the media ecosystem in Libya, designated to value the diversity of the Libyan society. $2.3 million for the artisanal and small-scale gold mining for the Amazon. Should I continue? Because I got more. $2.5 million to promote inclusion in Vietnam. $3.9 million for LGBT causes in the Western Balkans. $5.5 million for LGBTQ in Uganda. $6 billion to advance LGBT priority countries around the world. $6 million to transform digital spaces to reflect feminist democratic principles. $6.3 million to men who have sex with men in South Africa. You heard what I said. $8.3 million for USAID education, equity, and inclusion. Another $16.8 million to separate groups in Vietnam for the cause of inclusion. $15 million for oral contraceptives and condoms in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan per non-public congressional funding notices. I got more of these.
I mean, you're really on a roll here with these, okay? Take a breath. I don't know. I don't even know if you took a breath there.
Well,
but again, I know you're not trying to convince anyone of anything. And I know you're trying to get this information out there. And you're trying for people to be educated and learn. And they don't want to go to the computer and click on the sites, the two sites that you gave, to click and read it themselves. But interestingly enough, I didn't hear any money going to anything that, as a born-again believer in Jesus Christ, as a Christian, that we would say benefits the building of the kingdom of God, that promotes Jesus, that promotes Christianity. Did I miss something? I just want to make sure.
The only thing that comes
the
remotely,
Methodist Church.
yeah, the $1.2 million to the African
so they
Methodist
can have their
Episcopal-
lesbian preacher,
right?
give
Exactly.
an address at the inauguration in 4 years.
Exactly.
So again, as a Christian, as someone who loves Jesus, what you're saying right now to me, okay, it repulses me.
Yeah.
So
if
we're
it doesn't,
determining-
you got to do a gut check.
So anyone that is listening that made it through those, and Bill, trust me,
I got more.
He has pages. Okay, we could keep going for an hour, but if you're to this point after listening to what he said, and you're not repulsed, and you're not upset and angered, my question to you is why and how? Those are my two. Why are you not, and how are you not?
Right.
Okay.
So the name USAID is very duplicitous. And let's just be very frank about what this is, Carl. This is nothing more than a slush fund for the CIA to promote the Antichrist globalist agenda throughout the world. You saw in almost everything I read, and I promise you people, I got pages of this stuff. It's horrific. But if it isn't LGTB plus Q whatever stuff, it's DEI stuff. It is creating ecosystems of social spheres. It's doing everything, and I'm going to be selfish, but promoting America first.
Mm-hmm. With America's
while if you just look at North Carolina, and there were many other areas hit from Hurricane Helene. If you just look at that region, you look at LA County, you look at Maui, just those examples.
And South Carolina is burning as we speak.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it's burning right now.
And
in March, bro.
Right.
Like in the beginning of March.
Yeah.
Coming out of winter.
Right.
We're supposed to believe that it's timber time, that the state's going to burn down. I'm not that dumb. This isn't even about being a Christian. Don't people get offended intellectually when they push this stuff down our throats?
Well, as an American, what really creases me, quite frankly, I don't give a crap about spending a nickel for oral contraceptives in Afghanistan for Taliban-related groups. Like, let those people figure their own stuff out, right?
Yeah.
And this is just what gets me is, as I'm reading this and I'm studying this and I'm looking into this because I want to know for myself.
Yeah.
And I hope the people will look at whitehouse.gov, they'll look at doge.gov, and they'll be able to, because it's right there. This isn't my conspiracy theory. This isn't the
I don't know if I can believe you guys.
Right. This is
believe the government put it out.
Right. And if for whatever clout that brings, with is very little to me, but the fact of the matter is this official website. So it should piss you off. Okay. It should piss you right off. What also should upset you is, once again, bad actors within governmental agencies within America is seeking to destroy this country. And it's not just through military arms. We're going to get into that in a moment, but it's through the subconscious brainwashing throughout the world. Everything that is every red nickel, red cent that I've been reading here is spreading that antichrist globalist agenda. And what we have to realize is that this is a war that's being conducted through bad actors in this field, this political arena, where we as Christians, as you're saying, we can sit by and we can sit on our laurels and we can just go to church on Sunday mornings and, whatever. But I feel like in this time, these things are being exposed because we have an obligation and we have whatever ability that is, but we have the ability to be able to do something. Everybody that's listening has the ability to call, write, or email their congressmen and their senators, if nothing else, and need to be held accountable. So I got a lot I want to jam in here. I'm going to start shifting gears to what happened on Friday, February 28th, the exchange between Vice President J.D. Vance, Donald J. Trump, and Ukrainian dictator / president Vladimir Zelensky. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there was a quote-unquote showdown in the White House, and I have the audio clip. I'm going to play the entire clip right here in a moment of the exchange that happened between Zelensky, Trump, and Vance. And if you haven't heard it, I'm be really surprised because
what rock?
What rock are you living underneath? Right. But here it is, and give a listen, and we're going to be back in a moment.
During a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014
and 2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people are been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel. We signed ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have
And do you think that it's
I
respectful
will answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of
will
the United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this.
you're doing.
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very
you will
good.
Feel influenced.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't
was
have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What do you-
III.
what do you think
You're
about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country,
I'm
that's
with all
backed
respect to
you
your
far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
what
of
are you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country's
Can I-
in big
can I-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn
We-
good chance of
we are
coming out
staying-
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
allowed.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
allowed.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said thank
stupid
you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
We gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and your
voted
men
for
are
your
brave, but
president.
they had to use our military.
What about
if,
West
if you
Virginia?
didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell
you
you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I
over
understand,
there.
sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running low
I know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
that
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
But this
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry,
It's going to be
here.
a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you
but
saying?
what
She's
if
asking, what if Russia
Putin
breaks the ceasefire?
for the-
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now?
But they have
Okay?
broken
What if they
ceasefire.
broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden, because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me.
But all-
Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia Russia, Russia, Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
Okay, so that was the exchange that happened on Friday, February 28th, 2025, between President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and then Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. When Trump talks about playing with World War III, he is not understating that. The guy is a consummate liar. He's a porn star, a gay porn star at that, but what else? But this guy is a puppet. And I'm so thankful that Trump and Vance had the stones and the wherewithal to stand up for themselves, stand up for this country. That's my take. And diplomacy aside, I get that. But I think that where we're at right now, it calls for a little bit of crassness, if you will. It calls for a little bit of us getting beside ourselves and saying no more. I don't know what you think, Carl. I'd love to hear your opinion, but I have an article here I want to read. It's from the Gateway Pundit, and just to put some context, this came out March 3rd, written by Jim Hoff from the Gateway Pundit. Great news source if you've never heard of them, but it says Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, who met with Zelensky before White House visit, confirms the Ukrainian leader had already decided to torpedo Trump's mineral deal before meeting with Trump. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky torpedoed a crucial mineral deal with the United States before he even set foot in the White House to meet with President Trump. And now, thanks to Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, we have confirmation that Zelensky had already decided to sabotage the agreement after cozying up with anti-Trump lawmakers. On Friday, Zelensky first met with bipartisan group of U.S. senators at the Hay Adams Hotel, which is across the street where dignitaries and other foreign leaders come when they have dealings with the White House, where Zelensky was showered with praise from the deep state warmongers. Now, here's a list of the people who were here at this meeting. Tell me if anything runs congruent. Amy Klobuchar, who's a Democrat from Minnesota. Jackie Rosen, who's a Democrat from Nevada. Richard Blumenthal, who's a Democrat from Connecticut. Chris Murphy, who's a Democrat from Connecticut. Peter Welch, who's a Democrat from Vermont. Weldon Whithouse, who's a Democrat from Rhode Island. Chris Von Hollen, who's a Democrat from Maryland. Additionally, Rhino leader Lindsey Graham, who is a Republican from South Carolina. Roger Whittaker, who's a Republican from Missouri. And Charles Grassley, who's a Republican from Iowa, were present as well. What that should tell you is that people within our government are sabotaging, that they are warmongering, that they are positioning themselves to literally escalate this nuclear threat, this nuclear war threat that they're poking the bear with Putin. And it's dangerous. It's unprofessional. It's uncalled for. And you should be worried that a senator, alongside with a handful of other senators and Republicans, would come out and support adversarially what the President of the United States is trying to do, whomever that is. I'm for peace. I don't want nuclear exchange. I believe that's what Trump's heart and goal is. And you have bad actors on both sides of the aisle promoting and guilting this guy into not cooperating. And this is the third or fourth time that he's come out and changed his mind on the, I'm going to do the deal. I'm not going to do the deal. I'm going to do the deal. I'm not going to do the deal. And even today, you even talked to me, Carl, before we started. Well, are they going to do the deal? Because he sent a tweet out that said, I'm going to capitulate with President Trump. What are your thoughts before we go any further?
So I'm a firm believer in the accuracy of this podcast is because for me, being a part of it, one reason is I look at what has happened to tell you what's going to happen. I'm not a prophet, never sought the office. And one thing that really makes me sick, literally irritates, is the monetary surge on YouTube now with prophetic channels where they're going to tell you what God told them. I have no use for that. I don't believe. I've listened to some of it. I've read some of it. Whatever. 99% of what I've taken in is nothing more than entertainment for money value. Okay? It's someone saying they're a prophet or their channel is prophecy, trying to tell you what's going to happen based on what God just told them. Here's where I am. History is my wheelhouse. It is not movies. We've shared that when I discussed Fury.
Yes, I remember.
Right. Movies and history are within your purview. For me, it's just history. And the reason, as I've gotten older, I've taken such an interest in history is because when I was learning and studying, I realized that I may not know why something happened, as I've said. But if I know what happened and I know the truth about history, when I see another time down the road things that are happening, you don't have to be a prophet. I really believe that history will lead you to accuracy. I truly do. If you want to know what's going to happen, learn what has happened. Now, the mystery will be in the why. Okay? Why did it happen? There's your variance of opinion. I may have an opinion or a thought about why something happened. You may disagree and have your own. What we can't disagree on is what happened.
Right.
Now, as I'm getting older, I'm seeing history written about, history talked about, and that was my time period, living it. Okay? So that's how I know that I'm getting older, because they're talking about history and I'm sitting there telling you I lived it. I was there. I know the culture of that time. I know what I felt. And I decided with this whole Russia thing, I was going to go back as far as Reagan because that was my wheelhouse. I vividly remember being 18. I vividly remember that. Fortunately, Mr. William, it feels like yesterday. Okay? Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay. So I went all the way back to the whole Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev and the summits and the meetings and how Reagan couldn't handle Gorbachev. I lived it. I don't even need to read it.
Yeah.
Okay. My personal experience is accurate. I lived it. I remember hearing how he's just a professional actor. He's not a politician. He's not one of us. He's in over his head. Gorbachev is going to eat him alive. He's not qualified to lead us out of the Cold War. He's not going to achieve it. Then it switched because all of a sudden, Gorbachev liked Reagan. He respected Reagan. Believe it or not, he respected strength. Go figure.
Well, when you look at the numbnuts that were in that office,
Well, don't
that
forget.
former decade, you know,
Right.
Carter, Ford,
Right.
Tricky Dick,
Right. Coming right out of the Carter hostage situation and Carter begging, and then with Ronald Reagan comes in 48 hours, the hostages are home.
Look at that.
Anyways, I'm setting the history because I want the podcasters that are listening to understand this isn't about what we think. And maybe we don't even know the why, but we definitely know the what. And if you know the what, that's the most important part. I remember all of a sudden, once the summits were taken, because, oh my gosh, you can't go meet with Gorbachev. He's going to destroy you. You're not a pro like us. We're the ones that know how to evade war. We're the ones that know how to stop war. We're the ones that are trained. We've been here. You just came from Hollywood. What do you know? I heard it. I lived it. I saw it. That's what they said. Now, when Reagan gets in and starts making headway with Gorbachev, guess what? All of a sudden, he's a Gorbachev
Puppet.
lover.
Yeah.
He's a Gorbachev.
The terminology then was he was a Ruski.
There you
He was
go.
a Ruski lover.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
you remember that.
I do. Yeah. I also remember through history, Napoleon Bonaparte had his butt handed to him by the Russians. Adolf Hitler had his butt handed to him by the Russians.
Correct.
Mussolini
Correct.
had his butt handed to him by the Russians. You want to
Correct.
continue to go further?
It's all true.
Going to war with Russia, whether it be when they were the Soviet Union
Mm-hmm.
or currently as they are Russia, the only person who has ever had any victory over Russia, Soviet Union, whatever you want to call them, is Rocky Balboa.
A good point.
The only person, and I say that seriously.
No, it's true.
Yeah, to your point.
Yeah. So when all of these accusations, and this is what I want to talk about, because right now we're living in an accusational time period with politicians and what they're saying about our president. So I lived it. All of a sudden, they find out Ronald Reagan, in the middle of a summit, got pissed at Gorbachev and stormed out of the meeting and was not kicked out, brother. Left. Said a few choice things to him and left. And then they're like, oh my God, what did he do? The nukes are going to be pointed. You can't do that to him. Hey, he was accused of a lot of things. He was ridiculed for a lot of things. But after he did that to Gorbachev, he was invited back, and in 1989, in front of thousands of people and Gorbachev, he looked him in the eye and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this
that
wall.
Yes.
That's exactly what he said.
Yes.
And guess what? Not long after that, Russia tore down that wall. The Germans helped. The wall came down.
Well, David Hasselhoff singing on the wall also helped, I think.
Humpty Dumpty did a little help too. But so we have that history. Now we come to modern day. We're here again.
A generation later.
A generation later, and history is being made, and the same party is saying the same things about
same
an
people.
ex-TV star who knows nothing, who's not one of us, who's a fraud. He's in bed with Putin. He's a Putin puppet. Guess what? I've been here. I've already heard this.
And good on him. He had the stones to call it out. Putin and I have gone through this. You remember in 2016?
That's right.
Very bad.
Yeah. So once again, we're at a time where you're going to have to make a decision. As a Christian, as a citizen, as an American, do I want to believe what is being said by evil people that have evil motives, that are propagandists, that are liars, they've already done it. We've already seen it happen. We've already been there. We're now, again, faced with the question, do we embrace and do we digest with this political party that you just read 15 minutes ago, a list that, again, you could still be reading?
Sabotage.
Yes.
Yeah,
And-
exactly.
And every penny of that money that you read, all of the millions up into billions, hundreds of millions at least, are to benefit that party, to benefit their cause, to benefit that movement,
Right.
to benefit that evil. And these are the people that I want to trust to bring peace to the Ukraine. Is anyone going to tell me that I need to put my faith in these senators that sabotaged the White House meeting, that told Zelensky to go in there? I also heard that he was told, don't be bullied by Trump. He likes to bully people. So Zelensky believes it. The little guy goes in his pajamas. He's sitting there. Trump's towering over him as they sit. And he thought that he was going to. And here's the thing, Mr. William. The meeting for 40 minutes before the 11-minute blow-up was cordial. I didn't really see anything coming. I didn't see anything happening. I thought they were going to sign the deal.
Yeah.
It went south in the last 11 minutes of that clip that they played. The bottom line is where I am with this whole thing, and my thoughts is it's just the same regurgitated baloney garbage lies that I had to live through, that I had to experience under Ronald Reagan. It's now Donald Trump. They're saying this, they're using the same old playbook they've always used. It's never going to change. The devil is not a creator. He is an imitator. I have said that 100,000 times. There will be nothing new with this party. I could go on, but we need to move on.
It's interesting that you say that because there's two more points I want to hit. Because I want to be as exhaustive as we can in this limited time. And when you talk about what I would call the deep state establishment, from Lindsey Graham, who came out moments afterwards and gave a big, "Oh, I'm appalled." The guy literally, where'd the Oscars for that guy? But he literally has stepped into that place where McCain was, and all this was really foretold with one simple sentence from President Biden, who I love when Trump called him stupid. When Biden said,
"Oh, son of a bitch."
They're talking about Ukraine.
Yeah.
They're talking about the largest money laundering country in the world, and they're being
before the war.
Yes.
Amen, brother.
So let's talk about. I'm going to try to do this briefly because I need to establish a line of continuity. And, it was supposed to come out last week that the Epstein list and the Ghislaine Maxwell list was supposed to come out. We were supposed to get new revelations on JFK, RFK, MLK. And there was a big nothing burger that Pam Bondi delivered. And she's kind of been doing damage control. And I want to give her the benefit of the doubt. I like Kash Patel. I know they're working together now. The analogy that Elon Musk gave when he was talking to Joe Rogan last week on the podcast, which was excellent. The first 45 minutes was just him laying out exactly all this is. But basically the analogy Elon Musk gave was Trump is now the captain of the ship, and all the people that are working on that ship hate him. So he's got a lot of course correcting to do. But let's just look at this. You ever hear of a guy named James Comey?
Yeah, of course.
So he was the former chief of the FBI. So he has a brother. His name is Peter Comey, and he was part of a law firm called DLA Piper, who was in charge of the Clinton Foundation's audit. And if you go even further, James Comey's daughter, her name is Maureen Comey, who has overseen the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell cases, as well as having a hand in the bread and circus with all the Trump trials that happened last year. Then, if we look at Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who is the governor of Michigan, she has worked for George Soros in the past. Governor Gavin Newsom is the nephew of Nancy Pelosi. Senator Adam Schiff's sister is married to one of George Soros' son. Trump just talked about Shifty Adam Schiff.
Shifty Schiff. Yeah.
Shifty Schiff. John Kerry's daughter is married to one of the mullah's sons in Iran. And John Kerry's wife, who was the inheritor of the Heinz fortune, is duplicitous with a lot of things. Look that up. ABC News executive Ian Cameron is married to Suzanne Rice, who is Obama's former national security advisor. CBS president David Rhodes is the brother of Ben Rhodes, who is Obama's former deputy national security advisor for strategic communications. ABC's news correspondent Claire Shipman is married to Jay Carney, who is Obama's former press secretary. ABC News and Univision reporter Matthew Jaffe is married to Katie Hogan, who is one of Obama's former press secretaries. ABC President Ben Sherwood is the brother of Elizabeth Sherwood, one of Obama's special advisors. CNN Vice President Virginia Mosley is married to Tom Nides, who is the former Hillary Clinton deputy secretary. Dominion Voting Machines is run by a gentleman named Admiral Peter Neffinger, who was on Biden's transition team. He is on the board of Smartmatic, who entered into a business agreement in 2009 with Dominion Voting Machines. Smartmatic counts votes in Venezuela and the Philippines, who they've had their share of
questionable election
outcomes. Thank you. Yes. Smartmatic is owned by Lord Mark Malik Bourne, who has also worked for George Soros. Brown oversees the nonprofit organization Open Society Foundation, who is owned by George Soros, and the Center for Global Development. So he owned by Soros. This guy works for both of them. Smartmatic partnered with DLA Piper, who works for DLA Piper, the former head of the FBI's brother. Douglas C. Emhoff was married to Kamala Harris, and he also works at DLA Piper. Dominion is owned by Blum Capital Partners, who Richard Blum runs the board, and Richard Blum is Dianne Feinstein's husband.
Is that right?
Yes, Nancy Pelosi's husband is a major stockholder in Dominion voting machines. Nancy Pelosi's aide, Naheem Alzami, was hired by Dominion voting machines. Dominion Voting is listed as a major donor for the Clinton Foundation. So why did I bring all that up? Because every single one of these people have the little initial D next to their name. I don't like partisanism, but when you have a concerted effort of people trying to hijack global peace talks, the reason why these files weren't released from Epstein and from Maxwell isn't really Pam Bondi's fault. It's because people like Peter Comey and Maureen Comey, who work for the Southern District of New York, and it's a big cesspool there, they hid all of this evidence. Now, there's people that have evidence, and it's slowly starting to come to light, which is why it's taking so long. But when we look down the rabbit trail, it's a big incestual pool.
It is. It's all tied together. I do have one bit of good news in the middle of this disaster.
Sure.
They have tracked the stopping place of all of Hunter Biden's information, the pictures, the Epstein files. It's not just the names, but they actually have video and pictures of pedophilia and all of that in the house. And here's the information that I have received hot off the press. The field office in New York is where it was all diverted and sidetracked and kept.
Southern District.
That's right. The lead director from that office was just told to resign. He is going to be gone. He is out. That person, that man, that gentleman that was in that position, that oversaw that office, I don't know, Mr. William, if the information and the video and the proof and all of that was, well, I mean, if Hillary got it, it's gone. She knows how to acid destroy evidence, as we know.
Yeah,
she'll just acid
beat up
wash
the device.
you know, destroy everything in acid tubs and whatever, and it's gone. But if Hillary didn't make it to the office to handle the destruction based off of what she's already done, then I believe that there's going to come a reckoning, and there's going to be an unveiling, and there's going to be a destruction like a house of cards fallen, like maybe we've never seen. Because the funny thing is, everybody you just read, every name that you connected, they did all have the D, but they weren't people that were in East Cleveland living in poverty. They weren't from Philadelphia working 3 jobs to pay for rent. They weren't in DC's homeless area. They weren't in San Francisco in the homeless area. The people you just named, they all had their D. But the thing that also intermingles them besides that D is that they're in positions of power that set the course of history, that set the course of each country, of the entire world. They're literally people that are connected, that control, manipulate, and dictate world events. And those people that you just read intermingled at the highest positions of power.
And they want to give us the D.
Yeah, I know. How's that?
Well, they are giving us the D, but this has been kind of grim. And listen, this is stuff that you can do a quick Google search. This is not hidden information. I don't have any highfalutin contacts that I got.
Maybe you got abducted like I do sometimes with some top secret information. When I go missing.
I'm not like Woodward and Birdstein, where I got to call Deep Throat at 4 a.m. on a public payphone, but
get some secret stuff.
Exactly. But what I can tell you is that there is hope in the regards of what we are seeing now, like you said, has been done before. And I'm going to make some spiritual connections here. And I really wrestle with talking about this because the people are so duplicitous. They're so entrenched behind the enemy's lines and within the high ranking of army of that Antichrist spirit, that Antichrist system.
It's generational. It's from generation to generation.
Exactly. You got the Rockefellers, you got the royal family, whatever.
Sure.
But there is nothing new under the sun, like you said. I'm going to read 2 portions of scripture. They're a little lengthy, but I'm going to try to get through them as quickly as I can. John chapter 18, verses 28 to 40 from the Amplified. It said, "Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the Praetorium, the governor's palace. Now it was early, and the Jews did not enter the Praetorium so that they would not be ceremonially unclean, but might be able to eat and participate in the feast of unleavened bread, which began after the Passover supper. So Pilate came out and said to them, "What accusations do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If he were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you for judgment." Then Pilate said to them, "Take him yourself and judge him according to your own law." The Jews said, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill the word which Jesus has spoken to indicate by what manner of death he was going to die. So Pilate went into the praetorium again and called Jesus and asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "Are you saying this on your own initiative, or are others telling you about me?" Pilate answered, "I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own people and their chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done that is worthy of death?" Jesus replied, "My kingdom is not of this world, nor does it have its origin in this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would be fighting hard to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this world." So Pilate asked him, "Then you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I am a king. This is why I was born, and for this I have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth, who is a friend of the truth and belongs to the truth, hears and listens carefully to my words." Pilate said to him scornfully, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out to the Jews again and told him, "I find no guilt in him, no crime, no cause for accusation." Let me read Luke 23, verses 13 to 25, once again from the Amplified. Very similar, but just puts it slightly different. Pilate summoned the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them, "You brought this man before me as one who corrupts and incites the people to rebellion. After examining him before you, I have found no guilt in this man regarding the charges which you make against him. No, nor has Herod, for he sent him back to us, and indeed he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him to teach him a lesson and release him." Now he was obligated to release to them one prisoner at the feast, but they loudly shouted all together, saying, "Away with this man and release Barabbas to us." He was one who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection that happened in the city and for murder. Pilate addressed them again, wanting to release Jesus, but they kept shouting out, "Crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why? What wrong has he done? I have found no guilt, no crime, no offense in him, demanding death. Therefore I will punish him to teach him a lesson and release him." But they were insistent and unrelenting, demanding with loud voices that Jesus be crucified. And their voices began to prevail and accomplish their purpose. So the reason I wanted to include that was to simply put the idea of people creating havoc for these disastrous results. And you can argue, and I agree, that Christ's death was prophesied and paid for our freedom, for our salvation, which it truly did. But that same spirit that was rising against Christ is, I believe, within these people that we're referring to.
Well, what you just said, though, is it's true. It was prophesied. What you did was expose the vehicle by which that prophecy came into effect. So there's still prophecy to be fulfilled. Not as many as there was 20 years ago.
Right.
There's still prophecy now
Right.
to be fulfilled. So by exposing the past, which I recognize is history, and this would be considered biblical history.
Yes.
Okay? Whether you believe in God, whether you're an atheist, you can read the writings of Josephus, and you can see that he was a secular historian, a scribe. He just wrote it down. These records are accurate.
Yes.
So you would only be arguing the deity aspect, not that the event happened. Okay.
Right.
But we're living in a time now where if in the past the vehicle to usher in prophecy was driven through government, it was driven through politics, the politician, it was driven through the political leader. So a group of people got what they wanted. They really, if you back up, they actually threat Pilate. He didn't even want to hear the case. But then
They blackmailed him.
Yeah, they blackmailed him. It said, well, then we'll go above you. And when we do, oh, no. So they, he didn't call their bluff. They may have went above him. I don't know that. We'll never know. But the reality is that where we are now and what is happening now if you track history, we're watching the same thing unfold. We're watching politics and politicians that, whether they know it or not, are being used as the vehicle to literally usher in World War III. Literally. It is being set up, and we don't have the time to get into it. We'll do another podcast. I would be willing to do that. That's fine.
Okay.
To go over the geography of it, to go over the biblical recognition of these nations.
Magog and Dagog.
Yes. And to go over all of that.
For all our biblical scholars out there that recognize that terminology.
Yes. Gog and Magog.
Thank you. Magog. Yeah.
And show you that the aligning of nation is literally being orchestrated to fulfill prophecy, but the vehicle is propaganda, manipulation, lies, deceit, blackmail, corruption, strong arming, lies. We're going to give you this, we're going to do that, and then not, whatever. There's so much to get into, and it's such a deep topic. Maybe even next week we'll do follow-up, if that's what we choose to do.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is you've done a masterful job. You've done a wonderful job laying the foundation and framework for the people that we can now understand that government and political powers have been used through evil to do certain things, just like you read. It's already, and I'm going to end it on this because we got to wrap this up. If you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist, I have no problem being your friend. I have several atheist friends. We joke about our differences. It's funny in a way. But I will say, maybe you don't recognize the Bible as a learning tool because you don't recognize God. I would tell you this. Go look up history and go to King Philip IV of France and read how he became indebted to the order and he became indebted to Jewish people, believe it or not. He didn't have the wealth to handle his financial position. And he found out about the wealth of the Knights Templars. He found out about the wealth and how this Knights Templars developed a banking system that even he didn't understand, whereby they used to rob the knights on their journeys, on their pilgrimages, and they would deposit money in Jerusalem and they would deposit money throughout Israel. And
During the Crusades.
During the Crusades. And it was recognized from one location to the other. So when they were being robbed, they didn't have their money. They didn't have their wealth. It was genius. They literally accumulated wealth by protecting wealth, because at that time in history, people were being attacked and they were being ravaged and money was being taken and it was going to countries. So King Philip IV came up with an idea. Now we would say, the ruler of a country is a politician. He appealed to Pope Clement, who was the head of the Catholicism, the Catholic Church. And he came up with this plan. It's in history.
Yeah.
And if you're Catholic,
right.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to say I care because I didn't write the history and I didn't live it. I read it.
Right.
And he said, if you will handle the arrest and you will handle the torture and forced confessions and even the death, if necessary, of these knights, of these Christians throughout the Crusades, we're going to accuse them of heresy, and I will give unto you for this act money. You will accumulate wealth as a religious institution and structure by extending yourself to the hands of the King of France. History shows that this is what happened. What they didn't count on was that most of those knights would confess. They were tortured. They were beaten. They were burned. They were ripped, bowed, 2 arms and 2 legs. They were literally killed under this false accusation, these false lies throughout this event, which was led by politicians. And the vehicle for that to happen was infiltrated and came through the Catholic Church, which would be considered religious. So don't think, if you're an atheist and you don't recognize the Bible as accurate history, that what Mr. William is saying is inaccurate. All throughout history, we can go to governments, we can go to political powers, we can see it's there, it's in the history of how they have lied, manipulated, stolen, tortured, and killed It's nothing new. We're living in a time where we know there's nothing new under the sun. This has already happened. And I just wanted to bring up, that is world history.
Yeah. You're 100% spot on. You're dead. You're bang on. Right. I'm gonna say two things. I'm gonna pray us out. Here's a quote from a gentleman named Chuck Colson. Do you know who Chuck Colson is?
I do know who Chuck Colson is.
You don't know who Chuck Colson was? He was involved with Nixon in the Watergate scandal. And he later in life became a Christian. This is what he said. He says, "I know the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me because 12 men testified that they had seen Jesus raised from the dead. Then they proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Everyone was beaten, tortured, stoned, and put in prison. They would not have endured that if it weren't true. Watergate embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, and they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. You're telling me 12 apostles could keep alive for 40 years? Absolutely impossible." So to venerate what you're saying, through the lens of Chuck Colson, but keep this one last thing in mind. When we make mention of the Antichrist global governmental system, look at the term Antichrist and then globalism is such a catchphrase right now. The thing we need to focus on is governmental. The Antichrist is going to manipulate governmental systems, monetary systems, religious systems in order to instill his power, not unlike King Philip and the Pope at that time. And what we need to understand, why the study of government, why the study of history is so vital, especially if you're a born-again believer, is that one of the things that we're able to do is look at the prophecies fulfilled in scriptures and look at the ones yet to be fulfilled, and we line them up with current events. And it's speculation, of course. However, Jesus said, "You know a tree by its fruit." And what we can see here is if you have somebody who is trying to stop the annihilation of billions of people on the planet versus a handful of dumb knockers who aren't, you really got to start to evaluate things. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to pray us out. Father, I just thank you for this episode. I thank you for Carl being with me and for what revelation you've given me and you've given him. Lord, I just pray right now for the people listening that you would convict them, you would fill them, you would heal them. I ask right now for the scales to be removed from eyes. I ask for ears to hear, eyes to see, hearts to feel, spirits to discern what you are saying to us in this hour, Holy Spirit. I ask for a stiffening of spines. I pray right now, God, that you would just convict us all, that you would lead, guide, and direct us. I ask for open doors, for opportunities you want us to go through, and for moments to spread your word, to preach your gospel, God, and if necessary, to use words. And I just pray right now that the people listening will just be drawn closer to you. I pray the spirit of wisdom and revelation would come upon them, and God, that you would speak to them, that they would cultivate a fiery spirit, that they would hunger for your word, they would hunger for your presence. And God, right now, I just pray that this wouldn't just stay with the people listening, the people praying along. I ask right now that it was go into the leadership of the body of Christ throughout the world. I just pray that the name of Jesus will be lifted up and made famous. And God, I just bless you. Just praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you guys for listening. Please share. That's what we ask you to do. Just share this episode. And if it's a little controversial, that's okay. I think we all need to be provoked every now and again. And I just want to encourage you to share and to educate yourself. Once again, I just want to tell you guys, if you're in need of restoration, if you're in need of recovery, reach out to Restore Addiction Recovery. Their phone number is 234-571-9503. The website is restoreaddictionrecovery.com. Email address is info@restoreaddictionrecovery.com. Reach out to them. Say you heard CJ on Flawedcast and you need some help, or someone you love is in need of some help, and they'll help you with onboarding and get everything situated. And just as we've learned through these last couple sit downs, the need for recovery, the need to handle and lovingly through Christ's power deal with recovery of addiction is very, very present. So once again, restoreaddictionrecovery.com. And don't forget to share this episode where anywhere your podcasts are. You can just search Flawedcast CLE. We're on Apple, Spotify, Breaker, Anchor.fm, anywhere podcasts are. Flawedcast CLE. You can find us on the video platform Rumble. That's under Flawed Inc. You can find us on the Project Mockingbird, social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Getter, Gab, and Parler. That's all under Flawed Inc. In the description below, there's a link to pick up a copy of my book, Smith's Art of Man Repair Manual, and our email is flawedinccle@gmail.com. And just want to thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you again next week.